Nobody had ever accused humanity of doing things the sensible way. Which was why the pigeon's pride was currently screaming through Vexar 7 atmosphere at Mach 23, with a cargo hold full of antique porcelain, and a pilot who kept giggling. "Contact in 90 seconds, Tommy Rivera hollered from the cockpit, his hands dancing across controls that most species would have automated 3 centuries ago. "Loadmaster, how we looking back there?" In the cargo bay, Angela Brooks didn't even glance up from her calculations. Her fingers flew across a handheld tablet, while she eyed the stack of precisely arranged shipping containers. Each one wrapped in enough heat shielding to survive atmospheric entry, and painted with variations of "handle with care" in 17 different languages. "We're golden," she called back. "Just don't pull more than 8 Gs on the bounce or these crates are going to redecorate the interior." 8 Gs. "Angela, baby, I was planning on pulling at least 12. Then I hope you like expensive porcelain soup." In the corner of the cargo bay, Victor Santos checked his rifle for the 3rd time. The former Marine had exactly one job: make sure nobody shot at them while they were vulnerable on the ground. He'd been doing this gig for 2 years now, and the insurance company still hadn't figured out that security consultant meant walking arsenal with authority issues. Clinging to a support strut with all 4 of his trembling appendages was Quillix, a harmonious who had made the catastrophic decision to accept an internship with Human Express Delivery Services. His translator implant kept glitching because his species had never developed words for concepts like controlled crash or aggressive landing procedures. "This is not safe," Quillix chittered. His ocular organs were at maximum aperture. "This violates 12,000 safety protocols. The Guild of Interstellar Commerce would never approve." "The Guild can kiss my thrusters," Tommy sang out cheerfully. The pigeon's pride bucked as anti-aircraft fire erupted from the surface. Red tracer rounds stitched the sky around them, and something exploded close enough to rattle the hull plating. "Oh good, the welcoming committee showed up early. Victor, you seeing this?" Victor was already at the viewport, tracking the gun emplacements. 3 mobile platforms, 2 stationary turrets. "Looks like the Vexar Territorial Guard decided they don't like drop shipping." "They never do." Tommy yanked the stick hard left, and the ship corkscrewed through a cloud of shrapnel. "Angela, I'm adding some creative maneuvering to our descent profile. Adjust your calculations." "Creative maneuvering." "Tommy, I swear to God, if you break my payload arrangement." "It's not broken, it's aerodynamically redistributed." The ship screamed past a floating cargo platform. Close enough that their heat wash sent it spinning. Quillix's translator finally gave up and started outputting a continuous whine that might have been either a prayer or a resignation letter. Angela braced herself against a cargo container and recalculated. Mathematics was beautiful, elegant, and completely wasted on pilots who thought physics was more of a suggestion than a law. She'd spent 20 minutes arranging these containers in perfect balance. Each one had a specific weight, a specific center of gravity, and a specific amount of explosive bolts required to eject it at precisely the right moment. 60 seconds, Tommy announced. Another barrage of fire erupted below them. "Angela, be honest with me. Did you pack the blast charges like I asked?" "I packed exactly 1.3 kilograms of C4 per cargo door, distributed across 8 contact points, with a redundant detonation system and a manual backup. That's my girl." "And the customer's package?" 16th century earth porcelain, packed in memory foam, suspended in magnetic dampeners, surrounded by 3 layers of heat shielding. "Unless you literally fly us into a mountain, it'll survive." "Hey, I only flew into a mountain once, and that was entirely the mountain's fault for being there," Victor snorted. He'd checked the ship's service history. Tommy had crashed the pigeon's pride into geographical features on 4 separate occasions. Mountains, cliffs, and one memorable incident with a glacier that technically counted as landing on water, according to the flight logs. 30 seconds, people." Tommy's voice went up an octave, which Angela had learned meant he was about to do something stupid. "Quillix, buddy, you might want to hold onto something sturdy." Quillix was already holding onto something sturdy. He'd been holding onto it since they left orbit. His species had evolved on a low-gravity world, where the most dangerous thing was falling 3 meters onto soft moss. Humans had evolved on a death world where they threw themselves out of aircraft for entertainment. The pigeon's pride hit the lower atmosphere like a brick thrown by an angry god. Friction screamed across the hull. The temperature gauges climbed into ranges that would have made most species nervous. Tommy, however, was humming along to whatever was playing in his neural implant. "Tommy," Angela shouted, "are you seriously listening to music right now?" "Of course. It's my descent playlist. We're being shot at. Which is why I need appropriate background music. This is a delicate art, Angela. You can't just drop a ship through hostile airspace in silence. The whole thing lacks drama." Another burst of fire traced past them. Victor watched one of the mobile platforms track their descent, calculating firing solutions. The Vexar guard was used to dealing with automated freighters that followed predictable flight paths and obeyed traffic control. Tommy Rivera, on the other hand, obeyed nothing except his own twisted sense of physics. The ship rolled inverted, dropped 300 meters in 2 seconds, then pulled up so hard that Angela's stomach tried to exit through her spine. The mobile platform's targeting system completely lost them. Its guns fired at empty sky while the pigeon's pride screamed past at a 90-degree angle to where it should have been. Tommy howled. "Did you see that? That's what I call evasive action. That's what I call showboating." Angela checked her straps, 30 seconds to impact. The cargo containers groaned against their magnetic clamps, but held steady. Her calculations had accounted for Tommy being Tommy, which meant adding a safety margin that would make any engineer weep. Quillix had stopped making sounds entirely. His translator registered his vital signs as catastrophic terror and helpfully suggested he might want to update his will. "Victor, how's our landing zone?" Tommy asked, his voice suddenly all business. Victor zoomed in on the coordinates, a flat stretch of reinforced tarmac behind a warehouse facility. The client had paid extra for a secure location, which in the courier business meant slightly fewer people shooting at you. "Clear," Victor reported. "But those turrets have line of sight on the approach. Then we'll just have to bounce faster than they can track. 10 seconds. Angela pulled up the cargo release sequence on her tablet. Each container had specific timing requirements. Too early and they'd crater into the ground. Too late and they'd bounce right back into space. She'd done the math 3 times, checked it with 2 different AI systems, and then done it again by hand because you couldn't trust AI when humans were involved. The ground rushed up at them. Tommy pulled the nose up at the last possible second, reversed the main engines, and hit the emergency braking thrusters. The pigeon's pride didn't so much land as collide with the planet at a slightly reduced velocity. The impact rattled every bolt in the ship. Quillix made a sound like air escaping from a punctured habitat module. The cargo containers strained against their clamps, and for one terrifying second, Angela thought the entire load was going to shift. Then the bounce happened. The pigeon's pride hit the tarmac, compressed its landing struts to maximum, and rebounded back into the air with enough force to achieve low orbit if Tommy hadn't immediately fired the downward thrusters. They slammed back down a second time, bounced again, lower this time, and on the third impact finally skidded to something resembling a stop. "Landed," Tommy announced cheerfully. "That wasn't landing, that was having an argument with physics and losing." Angela was already moving, though, releasing the cargo clamps and initiating the door blast sequence. Deploying the cargo. The charges blew. 8 cargo doors exploded outward in perfect synchronization, and the shipping containers ejected on precisely calculated trajectories. They hit the tarmac, activated their own braking systems, and skidded to neat stops in the designated delivery zone. "Package deployed," Angela confirmed. "All containers green. Porcelain status nominal. Outstanding." Tommy was already firing up the engines again. "Victor, are we expecting company?" Victor had his rifle up and was scanning the perimeter. 2 vehicles were approaching fast, but they were marked with the client's corporate logo. The turrets, however, were swiveling toward them. "Client's pickup crew is inbound, but those turrets are getting twitchy. Then let's not overstay our welcome." "Angela, is the cargo bay secure? Buttoned up and ready to bounce?" Tommy didn't need to be told twice. He slammed the throttle forward and the pigeon's pride leaped back into the sky. The turrets opened fire, but they were tracking where the ship had been, not where it was going. Tommy threw them into a spiral climb that probably violated several laws of aerodynamics. Quillix, who had just started to believe he might survive, discovered that the terror was far from over. "We have to do the whole thing in reverse now," he wailed. "Nah," Tommy said. Going up is way easier than coming down. Gravity's not trying to kill us this time. Gravity is always trying to kill us when you're flying, they punched back through the cloud layer. The turret fire fell away below them. Tommy leveled out at 10,000 meters and set a course for the nearest jump point, whistling something that might have been a victory tune. In the cargo bay, Angela was already running diagnostics on the delivery. All containers had reached the client within acceptable margins. The porcelain had survived with zero breakage. The explosive charges had performed exactly as calculated. By every measurable metric, it had been a perfect run. She allowed herself exactly 3 seconds of satisfaction before starting the checklist for their next delivery. Victor secured his rifle and checked the ship's hull integrity. They'd taken a few hits from the anti-aircraft fire, nothing serious. Some scoring on the starboard plating, a couple of minor stress fractures that maintenance would patch at the next station. The Pigeon's pride had been built by humans, which meant it was over-engineered, under-elegant, and tough enough to fly through a debris field while on fire. "Hey," Tommy called back. "We're getting a message from the client." Angela pulled up the communication. A Vexar administrator appeared on screen, their feathers ruffled in what her cultural database suggested was approval. "Human Express Delivery Services," the Vexar said. "Your performance was adequate. The porcelain arrived intact." "Adequate?" Tommy looked offended. "We just did a combat drop through active fire and bounced the landing." "That's not adequate, that's art. You also terrified my loading staff and nearly gave our traffic controller a cardiac incident. Those sound like personal problems. Nevertheless, the contract is fulfilled. Payment has been transferred. We will not be requiring your services again." The communication cut off. Tommy grinned. "They'll be back." He was right, of course. Angela had been running the numbers. Human Express Delivery Services had a 30% customer loss rate and a 200% customer return rate. Species would swear they'd never use human couriers again, then discover that nobody else could deliver to war zones, quarantine sectors, or planets with inadvisable atmospheric conditions. When you absolutely, positively needed something delivered yesterday and didn't care how many safety regulations got broken in the process, you called the humans. "So," Victor said, checking the mission board. "What's next?" Angela pulled up their contract queue. "We've got a medical supply run to Tarsus Station. Time-sensitive biologicals that need to arrive within 18 hours. "Tarsus?" Tommy perked up. "That's the one with the asteroid belt, right?" "Yes, and before you ask, you cannot thread the ship through the asteroids. There's a clear navigation lane. But where's the fun in that? The fun is in not dying, Tommy. Agree to disagree." Quillix had finally released his death grip on the support strut. His appendages were still trembling, but he managed to access his datapad and began documenting the delivery. His internship required him to submit detailed reports on human operating procedures, presumably so his species could learn what not to do. "Inquiry," he chittered. "At what point in your training did you learn to pilot with such disregard for survival instinct?" Tommy laughed. "Buddy, this is my survival instinct. You think flying predictable patterns in a galaxy full of pirates and anti-ship weapons is safe. The only way to survive is to be so unpredictable that nobody can target you. This logic is flawed. Unpredictability suggests chaos. Chaos suggests loss of control. Loss of control suggests imminent death. Yeah, but see, the secret is being in control of the chaos. It's like juggling chainsaws while riding a unicycle. Why would anyone juggle chainsaws? For the same reason we drop cargo from orbit at Mach 20. Because it's awesome and someone's willing to pay us to do it. Quillix added this to his report under a section he'd labeled Evidence of Species-Wide Insanity. They cleared Vexar 7 gravity well. And jumped to FTL. The Pigeon's pride vibrated at a frequency that most ships suppressed with dampeners. Tommy had removed the dampeners because he claimed he could feel the engine's mood through the vibrations. Angela suspected he just liked the excuse to play his music louder. She ran her post-mission analysis, checking fuel consumption, ammunition expenditure. Victor had fired exactly 0 rounds, which was ideal. Everything was within acceptable parameters, assuming your parameters included a flying brick that's been shot at. "Angela," Tommy called. "You ever think about what we'd do if we weren't doing this?" She looked up from her tablet. "What, delivering packages at supersonic speeds while people shoot at us? Honestly, I'd probably be calculating shipping logistics for some boring corporation. Same math, way less explosions. See, that's what I love about this job. The math still works, we just do it faster and with more fire. Victor chuckled from his position by the weapons locker. I'd be back in the Marines, probably babysitting some diplomat who thinks body armor is too aggressive for peace talks. What about you, Quillix? Tommy asked. What would you be doing if you weren't interning with us crazy humans? Quillix's translator took a moment to process his response. I would be in a comfortable office, calculating risk assessments for standard cargo routes and enjoying a stress-free existence. But that sounds boring. Boring is safe. Boring is predictable. Boring means I would not require anxiety medication. Fair point, Tommy admitted, but you've got to admit this is way more interesting. Interesting is not always desirable. Interesting is often a precursor to death. Not if you're good at it, the ship's nav system chimed. They were approaching the Tarsus waypoint, which meant dropping out of FTL and plotting a course through the local space. Angela pulled up the route data and immediately saw the problem. Tommy, the standard navigation lane is congested. 12 freighters backed up waiting for traffic clearance. How congested? 6-hour wait, and we've got 18 hours to make the delivery. Correct. But if we factor in unloading time, customs inspection, and potential complications, 6 hours turns into a very tight margin. Tommy pulled up the asteroid field data. What if we went around? Around adds 4 hours. What if we went through? Angela had been expecting this. Through adds 90 minutes and requires precise piloting to avoid collision with approximately 3,000 asteroids. So you're saying it's faster. I'm saying it's potentially fatal. But faster, Victor leaned against the bulkhead. I should point out that our insurance doesn't cover asteroid-related damage. Which is why we won't hit any asteroids, Tommy said reasonably. Angela, plot me the fastest course through that belt. She sighed and started calculating. This was why she'd gotten into logistics. The math was always perfect, even when applied to imperfect situations like Tommy Rivera's flying. The asteroid field had patterns. Orbital mechanics were predictable. You could chart a course through chaos if you were willing to do the work. Her fingers flew across the tablet. She pulled gravitational data, rotational velocities, and trajectory predictions for every major object in the belt. Then she started threading a path through the gaps, accounting for the Pigeon's pride's maneuverability and Tommy's tendency to shave margins closer than safety regulations allowed. I've got a route, she announced, but it requires maintaining velocity above Mach 5 and making 37 course corrections with less than 2 seconds warning each. Perfect. Transmit it to my nav system. Tommy, I'm serious. This is not a flight path for someone who gets distracted by their music. Then it's a good thing I don't get distracted. I get inspired. Quillix pulled up the route on his own datapad and immediately regretted it. The path looked like someone had taken a strand of wire and threaded it through a three-dimensional maze designed by a sadistic AI. This is mathematically possible but practically suicidal, he observed. That's my specialty. Tommy brought them out of FTL right at the edge of the asteroid belt. Everybody strapped in, Angela checked her harness. Ready, Victor maglocked his boots to the deck. Good to go. Quillix engaged every safety restraint his suit possessed and activated his personal inertial dampener. I am prepared for death. That's the spirit. The Pigeon's pride dove into the asteroid belt like a missile. The first asteroid screamed past their port side with maybe 10 meters of clearance. The second came from below, forcing Tommy to roll the ship inverted and thread between two tumbling rocks that were definitely closer together than the ship was wide. First correction in 5 seconds, Angela called out, watching her tablet. Hard starboard, 15 degrees. Tommy's hands moved before she finished the sentence. The ship banked right, engines screaming. An asteroid the size of a small moon drifted through the space they just occupied. Correction 2, 8 seconds, pitch up 20 degrees. The ship pulled up. An asteroid passed below them close enough that its gravity field tugged at their trajectory. Tommy compensated without being told, adjusting their vector with thruster bursts. You're doing great, Angela said, and she meant it. For all his showboating and terrible jokes, Tommy Rivera was one of the best pilots she'd ever worked with. He flew by instinct and backed it up with reflexes that would make a combat pilot jealous. Correction 3, hard port, maximum burn. They jinked left. The engines howled. A cluster of asteroids fragmented in their wake from the exhaust wash. Victor watched the asteroids flash past through the viewport. In the Marines, they'd done orbital drop training. You learned real quick that space was big and mostly empty, right up until it wasn't. The belt was dense enough that every direction looked like a shooting gallery with them as the target. Correction 7, dive, dive, dive. The pigeon's pride dropped like a stone. Tommy added a barrel roll for no reason, except it looked cool and put them on the perfect angle for Correction 8. Quillix had stopped watching. His species possessed excellent peripheral vision, which meant he could see asteroids approaching from 4 directions simultaneously. This was not a survival advantage when all 4 directions contained certain death. 15 corrections down, Angela announced. 22 to go. How's the hull? Minor stress fractures forming on the port side, Victor reported. Nothing critical yet. Define critical, Tommy said, yanking them through a gap that the nav computer insisted was too narrow. Critical is when the hull breaches and we decompress. Everything before that is just cosmetic damage. They spiraled around an asteroid the size of a small city. Its gravity well tried to capture them, but Tommy used it to slingshot into the next gap, saving fuel and gaining velocity. Correction 19, immediate right turn, then immediate left. Tommy executed a maneuver that Angela's calculations insisted was impossible. The ship twisted through space like a fish swimming upstream, avoiding collision by margins measured in centimeters. "How are you doing that?" Quillix demanded. "Practice," Tommy hollered. "Plus, I disabled the collision proximity alarms because they're really distracting when they're screaming constantly. The alarms serve a safety function. Yeah. They tell me when I'm close to hitting something. But I can see when I'm close to hitting something, so really they're redundant. That is not how safety systems work. Correction 23, they were past the halfway point now. The asteroids were even denser here, creating a 3-dimensional maze that most pilots would refuse to enter. Tommy navigated it like he'd flown this route 1,000 times, anticipating Angela's corrections before she called them out. Correction 29, quick succession, hard up, roll right, pitch down, the ship danced. There was no other word for it. The pigeon's pride moved through space with a grace that belied its designation as a flying brick. Tommy treated flight controls like a musical instrument, creating harmony from thrust vectors and momentum. 10 corrections left. Angela's voice was steady despite the adrenaline. The next section of the belt contained smaller asteroids, thousands of them, creating a cloud of debris that no sane pilot would approach at speed. Tommy accelerated. "Are you insane?" Quillix shrieked. "Nope, just really good at this." The debris field engulfed them. Rocks the size of cars bounced off the forward shields. Pebbles pinged against the hull like metallic rain. The ship's point defense system activated automatically, using laser bursts to vaporize anything larger than a basketball. Correction 32 now, they wove through the debris. Tommy's hands were a blur on the controls. Angela called corrections faster than most pilots could process, and Tommy executed each one with machine precision and human intuition. "Final approach," Angela checked her display. 3 corrections remaining. Are you ready? Born ready. Correction 35, shallow climb. The ship angled upward. They burst through the debris field into clearer space. One more dense cluster ahead, then open space beyond. Correction 36, roll inverted, full burn. Tommy flipped them upside down and punched the engines. They shot through a gap between 2 rotating asteroids, their orbital dance perfectly synchronized to create a window that existed for exactly 2.3 seconds. The pigeon's pride made it through with 0.8 seconds to spare. "Last correction, Tommy. Hard right, maximum burn, hold for 8 seconds. "Got it." They turned. The engines screamed. An asteroid the size of a small planet drifted past their port side, its gravitational field bending their trajectory. Tommy held course, fighting the pull, until Angela's timer hit 0. Clear, they exploded out of the asteroid belt into open space. Tarsus Station hung in the distance, a rotating wheel of metal and lights. Behind them, the belt continued its eternal churning, indifferent to the madness they'd just survived. Tommy let out a whoop that probably violated noise regulations. "That's what I'm talking about?" Angela slumped in her seat, double-checking her calculations. Every correction had been executed within acceptable margins. 0 collisions, minor hull damage only. They'd threaded an impossible route and made it look easy. "Victor, status," she called. "We're intact. Hull breaches are within tolerance. Point defense system is at 60% ammunition, but we're clear of the belt now." "Quillix." The harmonious made a sound like a deflating balloon. His translator took several seconds to process it into words. "I am filing a formal complaint with the Interstellar Labor Board regarding hazardous working conditions." "Fair," Tommy said. "But admit it, that was pretty awesome. It was terrifying." "Yeah, but terrifying in a fun way. There is no fun way to be terrified." Angela pulled up the approach vectors for Tarsus Station. "Tommy, station traffic control is hailing us. They're asking why we just came through the asteroid belt at Mach 7. Tell them we were in a hurry." She opened the channel. "Tarsus Control, this is Human Express Delivery Services. We have a priority medical delivery approaching on Vector 7-3 Alpha." The traffic controller sounded tired. "Human Express, we have you on scanners. That was possibly the most reckless piece of flying I've seen this cycle. You're cleared for emergency approach Bay 12, but you're paying for the expedited docking fee." "Worth it," Tommy muttered. They glided toward the station. At this distance, Tommy actually followed procedure, reducing speed and responding to traffic control's guidance. Angela sometimes wondered if he only flew crazy in the dangerous parts, because he got bored with the safe parts. They docked with a gentleness that completely contradicted everything they'd done in the last 2 hours. The Pigeon's pride settled into Bay 12 like a butterfly landing on a flower, mag clamps engaging with barely a whisper. "Landed," Tommy announced. "Victor, you want to handle the handoff?" "On it." Victor grabbed the medical containers and headed for the cargo bay door. He'd done enough priority runs to know the drill. Medical supplies meant doctors waiting on the other side, ready to snatch the cargo and run. Sure enough, a medical team in cleanroom suits was already at the dock. Victor passed over the containers, verified the transfer codes, and signed the digital receipt. The whole transaction took 90 seconds. Back in the cockpit, payment confirmation arrived. Angela allocated it to their accounts. Fuel costs, ammunition replacement, hull repairs, and the remainder split 4 ways according to their contract. "Another successful delivery," she said. "Against all odds and probability. That's why they pay us the big bucks," Tommy said. "Well, moderate bucks. Okay, slightly better than minimum wage once you factor in hazard compensation." "The hazard compensation is the only reason I'm still here," Victor admitted, returning from the cargo bay. "That and the free medical insurance, which we need because of the hazards," Angela pointed out. "Exactly. It's a perfect system." Quillix was reviewing the flight data on his pad, his appendages twitching in what his species considered deep contemplation. "How many deliveries do you complete annually?" "About 800, Angela said. "And how many result in catastrophic failure?" "Define catastrophic." "Ship destroyed, crew casualties, cargo completely lost." Angela pulled up their safety record. "In the last 3 years. 5 ships destroyed, 0 crew fatalities, 4 cargo losses." "5 ships destroyed?" Quillix's ocular organs widened. "This is an acceptable loss rate. The ships are insured." "And the crews all survived." "How?" Tommy grinned. "Because we're really good at crashing. It's like landing, except louder and with more fire. You just gotta walk away from it. This is madness. This is courier work, buddy. You want safe, go work for Galactic Standard Shipping. They've got protocols, procedures, and a perfect safety record. Then why doesn't everyone use them? Because they take 6 weeks to deliver anything, require 17 forms in triplicate, and won't go anywhere interesting. We get it there in 6 hours and don't ask questions." The station's communication system chimed. Angela pulled up the message and raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. We've got a priority request." "How priority?" Tommy asked. "We'll pay triple rate for immediate pickup priority." That got everyone's attention. Triple rate meant either someone was desperate, stupid, or both. In the courier business, those were the best customers. "What's the job?" Victor asked. Angela read the details. "Private contract. Pickup on Tarsus Station, delivery to New Marrakesh in the Frontier Systems. Cargo is listed as personal effects, 20 kilograms, non-hazardous." "New Marrakesh?" Tommy pulled up the star charts. "That's through Corsair Space. Hence the triple rate." Corsair Space was the polite term for lawless region full of pirates who shoot first and don't bother asking questions later. Most courier refused to fly there. Galactic Standard Shipping didn't even acknowledge it existed on their maps. Human Express Delivery Services, however, had built their reputation on going exactly to those places. "I'm in," Tommy said. "Victor, I could use the hazard pay, plus shooting at pirates is more interesting than shooting at asteroids." "Angela," she ran the numbers. Triple rate minus fuel costs, ammunition, potential repairs, and risk assessment gave them a profit margin that made her smile. "I'm in. But we're charging extra if they shoot at us." "They're definitely going to shoot at us," Victor said. "Then we're making a fortune. Quillix, you want to sit this one out? We can drop you at the station." The Harmonious hesitated. By every measure of his species' common sense, he should take the exit. This was an opportunity to return to safety, file his reports, and never set foot on a human vessel again. But he'd just flown through an asteroid belt at Mach 7. He'd survived a combat drop through anti-aircraft fire. He'd watched humans treat death-defying stunts as routine tasks. And somewhere in his thoroughly traumatized brain, a tiny voice whispered that he'd never feel this alive again doing risk assessments in a comfortable office. "I will accompany you," he said quietly. "For the sake of my research." "That's the spirit," Tommy clapped him on what he hoped was a shoulder. "Welcome to the team, buddy. First rule of courier work, if you're not at least a little scared, you're not paying attention." They filed the flight plan with station control, listing their destination as New Marrakesh and their cargo as personal effects. Control didn't even blink. Ships going to the frontier systems were usually either military, criminals, or crazy humans, sometimes all three. The client arrived 20 minutes later. A human woman in expensive business attire, carrying a small case that definitely weighed less than 20 kilograms. She looked nervous, which was standard, but also determined, which was interesting. "You're the Human Express Delivery Service?" she asked. "That's us," Angela confirmed. "You're Ms. Hayes, Rebecca Hayes, yes. Is it true you can get this to New Marrakesh in 12 hours? We can get it there in 8 if we skip the scenic route." Rebecca looked at the Pigeon's pride, taking in the scarred hull plating, the mismatched patches, and the loading ramp that looked like it had been welded on by someone in a hurry. "This ship looks like it barely survived a war." "Several wars," Tommy corrected, "but she flies great. What's in the case?" "Personal effects." "Yeah, we got that from the manifest." "But what kind of personal effects are worth triple rate through Corsair space?" Rebecca hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "My brother's ashes. He died on Tarsus Station last week. His will specified he wanted his remains scattered on New Marrakesh, where we grew up. The funeral home wanted 6 weeks and 15,000 credits to transport them. You're the only courier service that would do it faster." There was a moment of silence. "Ma'am," Victor said, his voice gentler than usual, "we'll get your brother home." "You have my word," Tommy nodded. "Yeah, this one's personal. Angela prepped the special cargo bay." Angela knew what that meant. They had a small, environmentally controlled section of the cargo hold that they used for sensitive shipments. Climate-controlled, magnetic dampening, the works. Normally, they charged extra for it. For this, they wouldn't. Rebecca handed over the case. "Thank you. We'll transmit confirmation when we reach New Marrakesh," Angela assured her. 8 hours. They loaded the case into the special bay with a care they usually reserved for explosive materials. Victor secured it personally, using restraints that could hold during a full inversion crash. Tommy filed an updated flight plan that listed their cargo as priority humanitarian delivery. "Okay," Tommy said, settling into the pilot's seat. "New Marrakesh, straight shot, no stops. Quillix, you might want to grab that anxiety medication. This route goes through some interesting neighborhoods." "Define interesting." "Places where people shoot at you for fun instead of profit." Quillix accessed his medication dispenser. They launched from Tarsus Station and set course for the frontier systems. The route took them through 3 different territorial zones, 2 disputed sectors, and a region of space that most navigation charts marked as transit at own risk. For the first 2 hours, everything was routine. They made good time, kept their transponder on, and didn't attract attention. Angela used the time to calculate their approach vectors for New Marrakesh. The planet had an atmosphere thick enough to require careful entry angles, and their usual method of drop like a brick wouldn't work for this delivery. Then the proximity alarms started screaming. "Contact," Victor called out. 3 ships intercept course." Tommy pulled up the scanner display. 3 light raiders, Corsair design, probably freelance pirates looking for easy prey. They'd seen the human courier transponder and decided to try their luck. Angela, can we outrun them? Not at current velocity. They're faster than us. Can we outfight them? Victor checked his weapons inventory. We've got 1 forward turret, 2 side-mounted pulse cannons, and whatever explosives Angela feels like throwing out the cargo bay. Against 3 raiders. We're outgunned, so we do what we do best, Tommy said, and his grin was visible in his voice. We get weird. He killed their forward momentum and rotated the ship 90 degrees. The raiders, expecting them to run, overshot their intercept course by several kilometers. By the time they corrected, Tommy had the Pigeon's pride accelerating in the opposite direction. That bought us maybe 30 seconds, Angela said. 30 seconds is plenty. Victor, target the lead ship's engines. Don't destroy them, just make them nervous. Victor lined up the shot. The forward turret spat coherent light across the void. His targeting was surgical. The beam carved across the raider's engine cowling without penetrating, sending a spray of ablative armor into space. Warning shot delivered, Victor reported. The raiders responded by opening fire. Plasma bolts stitched the space around them. One caught their starboard side and the hull screamed. They're not backing off, Angela said. Then we go to Plan B. Tommy rotated them again, this time presenting their belly to the attackers. Angela, remember that debris field we passed about 10 minutes back? She pulled up the nav data. The one marked as a navigational hazard. That's the one. How fast can we get there? 3 minutes at maximum burn, but Tommy, that field is dense. We barely survived the asteroid belt. These guys don't know that. Hold on, the Pigeon's pride dove toward the debris field at a velocity that made their hull plating groan. The raiders followed, firing as they came. More hits scored their armor. Warning lights flickered across every console. Hull integrity at 70%, Victor called out. Still better than 0%. They hit the debris field at Mach 9. Tommy didn't slow down. Fragments of ancient spacecraft, broken satellites, and unidentified chunks of metal filled the space ahead. The raiders followed them in, still firing, but their shots were getting less accurate as they tried to avoid collisions. Angela, I need a path through this mess, she was already calculating. Left 15 degrees, hold for 4 seconds, then hard right, Tommy executed. A piece of debris the size of a bus tumbled through the space they just occupied. One of the raiders wasn't as lucky. It clipped the fragment, sending both ship and debris spinning off course. 1 down, Victor announced. 2 pursuing. Hard up now, the ship climbed. Tommy threaded between 2 pieces of debris, rolled inverted, and dropped back down at a different angle. The raiders were larger than the Pigeon's pride, less maneuverable, and starting to realize they'd made a tactical error. They're breaking off, Victor said. Not yet, they're not. Tommy's voice went cold. These guys shot at us while we're carrying someone's brother home. Angela, where's that big piece of debris you spotted earlier? She knew which one he meant. Bearing 270, 15 seconds at current heading. Perfect. Victor, I'm going to give you a shot. Make it count. Tommy pulled them into a tight spiral around the large debris fragment, the shattered remains of what might have been a colony ship. The raiders followed, trying to get a firing solution. At the last second, Tommy reversed thrust and dropped below the fragment. The raiders shot past them, and Victor had a perfect angle on their unshielded engines. He fired both pulse cannons. The shots were precise. They didn't destroy the raiders, but both ships lost primary propulsion. They tumbled into the debris field, firing emergency thrusters to avoid collisions. That's a courtesy tap, Tommy transmitted on the raider frequency. Next time we won't be so polite. Human express delivery doesn't stop for pirates. He gunned the engines and left the debris field behind. The raiders were alive but stranded, their distress beacons already activating. Someone would eventually pick them up. Nice shooting, Tommy said. Nice flying, Victor replied. Angela checked the hull damage. We're down to 62% integrity. That's going to be expensive to repair. We're getting triple rate, remember. Plus hazard compensation for being shot at. I'm adding an itemized bill to MS Hayes' invoice for the damage. Angela. We're not charging extra to someone transporting their brother's ashes. I know. I'm sending the bill to the pirates once we identify their organization. They shot at us. They can pay for the repairs. Quillix had watched the entire engagement in silence. When it was over, he finally managed to speak. You disabled 3 hostile vessels without destroying them. Yeah, Tommy said. We're couriers, not murderers. Those guys were just doing their job, same as us. But they attempted to kill us, and we discouraged them. That's how it works out here. You make your point, they make theirs. Everybody lives to try again tomorrow. This seems inefficient, probably. But it means we can fly through Corsair space without every pirate in the sector gunning for us specifically. We're dangerous enough to avoid, not dangerous enough to be worth hunting down. It's a balance. They cleared the debris field and resumed course for New Marrakesh. The planet appeared on their scanners an hour later, a blue-green marble with white cloud formations and 2 small moons. Angela pulled up the entry protocols. Good news, she said. New Marrakesh has a proper spaceport, no combat drop required. Where's the fun in that? The fun is in not dying during delivery. I've already transmitted our approach vector. They're giving us priority clearance on account of this being a humanitarian mission. Tommy guided them into the atmosphere. For once, he flew gently, treating the descent like it mattered. The Pigeon's Pride glided through the upper atmosphere, shedding velocity gradually. Below, New Marrakesh resolved into continents and oceans, cities and wilderness. Spaceport Control is directing us to Pad 7, Angela reported. Medical Examiner's office has been notified. They'll take custody of the remains and handle the final arrangements. They landed without incident. The touchdown was so smooth that Victor actually commented on it. You can fly normal when you want to, he observed. Yeah, but where's the fun in that? Tommy shut down the engines. Angela, let's get this done right. They carried the case out personally, all 4 of them. The medical examiner was waiting on the pad, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes who'd seen this duty too many times. Human Express, she asked. That's us, Angela confirmed. Delivery for Hayes, priority humanitarian. I'll take good care of him. His sister already transmitted the scatter site coordinates. We'll handle it tomorrow at dawn. Victor handed over the case with ceremony. He made it home, ma'am. Thank you, really. The family appreciates that someone was willing to make the run. They watched her carry the case toward the facility. Tommy stood a little straighter than usual. Victor's jaw was tight. Even Angela felt the weight of completion. Quillix broke the silence. Do you accept many contracts like this? Sometimes, Angela said. Most of our jobs are commercial freight or corporate deliveries. But every so often, someone needs something moved that matters more than the cargo value. We don't turn those down, even though they're dangerous and barely profitable, especially then. They filed the completion paperwork, transmitted confirmation to Rebecca Hayes, and received the payment transfer. Angela split it according to their standard contract, then allocated a percentage to the ship's repair fund. The damage from the raider attack would take a few days at a proper shipyard to fix completely. So, Tommy said, checking the mission board. We've got 20 hours of downtime while they patch the hull. Anybody got plans? Sleep, Victor said immediately. 8 hours of uninterrupted, non-combat sleep. I'm going to recalculate our risk assessment models, Angela said. The asteroid belt run broke 3 of my previous safety margin assumptions. Quillix, the Harmonious consulted his datapad. I need to compile my research notes. I have documented 63 separate violations of standard operating procedures in the last 12 hours alone. Only 63. I thought we'd hit at least 80. I stopped counting during the debris field engagement because I became convinced we were about to die, Tommy laughed. See, that's where you went wrong. You gotta trust the process. The process appears to be controlled chaos. Exactly, you're learning. They secured the Pigeon's Pride and headed for the station facilities. New Marrakesh's spaceport was Frontier class, which meant the accommodations were basic but functional. Hot showers, real food, and beds that didn't vibrate at FTL frequencies. Angela found a corner booth in the station cantina and spread out her work. She pulled up the day's flight data and started analyzing. The asteroid belt run had generated enough information to refine her delivery time calculations for future contracts. If they could reliably shave 90 minutes off difficult routes, they could underbid competitors while maintaining safety margins. Well, maintaining her safety margins. Tommy's safety margins were more like safety suggestions. Victor cleaned his rifle with the methodical precision of a man who'd done this 10,000 times. The weapon was older than most ships in the port. a relic from his marine days that he'd rebuilt so many times it probably counted as new. Each component got individual attention, checked for wear, tested for reliability. Tommy was at the bar, charming the bartender and swapping stories with other pilots. He had a gift for networking, could make friends with anyone who'd listen to his flying tales. Half their contracts came from word-of-mouth recommendations from people Tommy had met in spaceport bars. Quillix sat alone, staring at his datapad. His research notes had expanded beyond violations of standard procedures into something more complex. He was beginning to understand that human courier services operated on fundamentally different principles than the rest of galactic civilization. Where other species prioritized safety, humans prioritized speed. Where others sought predictability, humans embraced chaos. Where others avoided risk, humans calculated how much risk they could survive and then added 10% more. It shouldn't work. By every logical measure, human express delivery services should have gone bankrupt in the first year. Their insurance premiums alone should have been prohibitive. But they succeeded because they solved problems nobody else would touch. The impossible deliveries, the dangerous routes, the contracts that required someone willing to fly through hell and arrive on time. "You look contemplative," Angela said, sliding into the booth across from him. Quillix's translator took a moment. "I am attempting to understand human operational logic." "Good luck. I've been working with these people for 3 years and I'm still figuring it out. Yet you remain employed." "Yeah. Want to know why?" "Affirmative." Angela gestured at her tablet covered in equations and flight data. "I'm good at math. I can calculate delivery routes, fuel consumption, and risk factors faster than most AI systems. Before this job, I did logistics for a major corporation. Great working conditions, excellent benefits, complete job security. This sounds preferable to your current employment." It was boring. Every calculation had the same answer. Take the safe route, follow the protocol, never deviate from procedure. I was using maybe 10% of my abilities because the other 90% involved risk that the company wouldn't accept. She smiled. "Here, I use everything I've got. Every calculation matters. Every route is a puzzle. Tommy needs me to find paths through impossible spaces, and I deliver. It's terrifying and exhausting, and I've never been happier. This is incomprehensible." "Yeah, that's pretty human." Tommy returned from the bar with drinks. "All right, team meeting. I just talked to a mining freighter captain. He's got a contract that might interest us." "How might?" Victor asked. "They need specialized equipment delivered to a mining operation in the Obsidian Reach. Fast delivery, hazard pay included." Angela pulled up the location data. The Obsidian Reach is in an active asteroid field being mined by 3 different companies. It's got more traffic than a core world intersection and approximately 0 traffic control. So it's perfect for us. Define perfect. Dangerous enough to pay well. Crazy enough that nobody else will do it, and right in our operational sweet spot. Victor considered. "What's the cargo?" "Mining laser components. Time-sensitive because their primary excavator is down. Every day of delay costs them millions." "How much are they paying?" Tommy named a figure that made Angela raise her eyebrows. "That's double our standard rate," she said, "for a single day's work. We pick up tomorrow, deliver the day after, make enough to cover our repairs and turn a profit." "What's the catch?" "We have to deliver to a moving target. The mining operation is on an asteroid that's currently being mined, which means it's changing position, mass, and gravitational characteristics in real time." Quillix made a sound like air escaping from a punctured seal. "This is actively suicidal." "Or actively profitable," Tommy countered. "Angela, can you calculate an approach for a moving target with variable mass?" She was already running numbers. "Yes, but it'll require constant recalculation during approach. We're talking about adjusting our trajectory every few seconds based on live telemetry data." "Can you handle it?" Angela looked at the challenge in front of her, a mathematical problem that would require her to factor in real-time changes to gravitational fields, momentum vectors, and thrust calculations while Tommy flew them through an active mining field. "Yeah," she said, "I can handle it. Victor, if we're flying into an active mining zone, there'll be debris, lots of it. Some of it might be coming at us at high velocity. Can you handle point defense?" Victor patted his rifle. "I can handle it." "Quillix," the Harmonious looked at his 3 crewmates. The pilot who treated physics like a suggestion. the loadmaster who turned impossible mathematics into flight plans, the security specialist who considered active combat zones interesting. He should refuse. He should file his reports, resign his internship, and return to his safe, predictable life calculating risk assessments. But he'd watched them thread an asteroid belt. He'd seen them fight off pirates without killing anyone. He'd witnessed them treat a stranger's grief with care and dignity. He'd learned that human chaos had patterns, and those patterns produced results that conventional wisdom said were impossible. "I will accompany you," Quillix said. Tommy grinned. "That's what I like to hear. All right, team, we've got 18 hours before pickup. Get some rest, do your prep work, and be ready to fly." "This is going to be a good one." They dispersed to their quarters. Angela took her tablet and continued refining her calculations. Victor finished his rifle maintenance and moved on to checking the ship's point defense systems. Tommy filed the necessary paperwork and probably sent a message to his mother, because even crazy pilots had families who worried about them. Quillix updated his research notes. He'd started the internship expecting to document human inefficiency. Instead, he was documenting a new operational paradigm that succeeded by embracing the very risks other species avoided. His final note for the day read, "Humans do not ignore danger. They calculate exactly how much danger they can survive, then use that danger as a tool to achieve impossible results. This is either genius or insanity. Further research required." 18 hours later, they were back in the Pigeon's Pride, newly repaired and ready for the next contract. The hull patches were visible as slightly different shades of gray, a patchwork history of every delivery that had gone sideways. "Pickup coordinates locked," Angela announced. "ETA 90 minutes. Tommy brought the engines online. "Then let's go make some money." They launched from New Marrakesh and burned toward the Obsidian Reach. The asteroid field appeared on their scanners well before they arrived. A massive cloud of rock and ice being systematically dismantled by mining operations. Laser fire crisscrossed the void, carving chunks from asteroids. Freighters moved through the field like bees in a hive, collecting ore and ferrying it to processing stations. "This is controlled chaos," Angela observed. "The best kind," Tommy agreed. They reached the pickup point, a mining station anchored to a medium-sized asteroid. The cargo was waiting, 12 containers of laser components, each one marked as fragile and essential. Angela supervised the loading personally, ensuring each container was properly secured in her precisely calculated arrangement. "Delivery coordinates?" she asked. The mining company transmitted the data. Angela pulled it up and her eyes widened. "Tommy, the target asteroid is currently being carved into a sphere. They're removing approximately 5,000 tons of material per hour, so its mass is changing constantly, along with its gravitational field, surface characteristics, and structural integrity. Can you plot it? If I get real-time telemetry data and you can adjust our approach in real time, yes. Then we're good." "Let's fly." The Obsidian Reach lived up to its name. The asteroids here were dark, dense, and rich in valuable minerals. Mining lasers painted the void with coherent light, each beam powerful enough to vaporize metal. Debris clouds drifted between the active mining sites, creating navigation hazards that shifted constantly. Tommy threaded the Pigeon's Pride through the field with practiced ease. This was different from the earlier asteroid belt. Those had been natural formations following predictable orbital patterns. This was industrial chaos, with mining ships cutting new paths through the rock every second. "Approaching target asteroid," Angela called out. "Transmitting our approach vector to the mining operation." "They're clearing a landing corridor. Cleared corridor means no laser fire, right? In theory." "I love it when you say in theory." The target asteroid rotated into view. What had started as an irregular chunk of rock was now being carved into a perfect sphere by mining lasers working in synchronized patterns. The surface was covered in scaffolding, equipment, and miners working in zero-G suits. "They're reshaping the entire asteroid," Quillix observed. "Easier to process," Victor explained. "Turn it into a sphere, hollow it out. You've got a ready-made habitat or storage facility. Very efficient, also very dangerous to land on while they're still carving it. That's why they're paying us the big money." Angela pulled up the live telemetry feed. "Tommy, I'm reading a mass decrease of 0.3% since we started our approach. Adjusting gravitational calculations. Reduce velocity by 2%. The ship slowed fractionally. Angela watched her numbers, comparing projected gravitational pull against actual sensor readings. The math had to be perfect because one miscalculation would send them either crashing into the surface or missing the landing zone entirely. Hard burn in 3 seconds, she warned. The engines fired. They dropped toward the asteroid, fighting against its reduced but still significant gravity. Mining lasers shut down as they approached, creating a temporary safe corridor. 200 meters, Victor called out. Landing zone is clear. 100 meters, mass decreased again, adjusting. 50 meters. Tommy fired the braking thrusters. The Pigeon's pride settled toward the surface, its landing struts extending. The asteroid's gravity was weak enough that they were essentially docking rather than landing. Contact, the maglocks engaged, pulling them down to the prepared landing pad. Around them, mining lasers resumed their work, carving away at the asteroid's surface like sculptors working on a massive project. Cargo deployment in 30 seconds, Angela announced. They ejected the containers using precisely calculated trajectories. Each one launched from the cargo bay, fired maneuvering thrusters, and settled into the designated receiving areas. Mining crews in zero-G suits immediately began securing them. All cargo delivered, Angela confirmed. Payment received. Outstanding, Tommy fired the engines again. The ship lifted from the surface, climbing away from the carved asteroid. One more successful delivery for Human Express. They left the Obsidian Reach behind and set course for the nearest station. The payment from the mining contract, combined with the earlier deliveries, meant they were ahead of schedule and under budget. By courier service standards, it had been a spectacularly successful couple of days. You know, Tommy said as they jumped to FTL, I think we're getting good at this. We were always good at this, Angela corrected. We're just getting better. Fair point. Victor, any damage? Minor scoring from debris impacts. Nothing critical. Quillix, how's your research going? The Harmonious had filled multiple data storage units with observations, calculations, and analysis. His internship had required him to study human operational procedures for 6 weeks. He'd accomplished more in 3 days than most interns managed in the full period. My research is complete, Quillix announced. I have sufficient data to compile my report. And what's your conclusion? Angela asked. Quillix considered his words carefully. Human courier services operate on principles that contradict standard operating procedures. You embrace risk, improvise solutions, and treat safety margins as negotiable parameters. By every measure of conventional logistics theory, you should fail. But, Tommy prompted, but you succeed because you've optimized for variables other species ignore: speed, adaptability, creative problem-solving under pressure. You don't avoid danger. You calculate exactly how much danger you can survive and use it as an advantage. That's the nicest thing anyone's said about us all week, Tommy said. It is not a compliment. It is an observation. Your methods are terrifying, inefficient, and violate numerous safety regulations. And yet they work, consistently, reliably. Against all logical expectations. Angela smiled. Welcome to Human Express Delivery Services. We specialize in making the impossible look routine. The Pigeon's pride flew on through the void, its hull scarred from a dozen close calls, its crew comfortable with danger. Its cargo delivered on time. Behind them, the galaxy continued its eternal spin, full of packages that needed delivering and humans willing to deliver them. Somewhere in the Obsidian Reach, miners installed laser components and returned to work. On New Marrakesh, a medical examiner prepared for a dawn ceremony. On Vexar 7, a warehouse received antique porcelain intact. On Tarsus Station, biologicals saved lives. And aboard the Pigeon's Pride, Tommy Rivera queued up his descent playlist. Angela Brooks calculated the next impossible route. Victor Santos cleaned his rifle, and Quillix updated his research notes. The mission board showed 17 new contracts waiting for review. Some were routine freight runs. Some were priority medical supplies. Some were marked with hazard warnings that would make most pilots refuse immediately. Tommy pulled up the most dangerous one and grinned. All right, team, he announced. How do you feel about delivering experimental fuel cores to a station inside a star's corona? That's suicidal, Quillix said. Yeah, but it pays triple rate plus hazard compensation. Angela was already running the numbers. I can plot a course. We'd need to upgrade our heat shielding. We can afford it with yesterday's payments, Victor noted. They looked at Quillix. The Harmonious made a sound that his translator rendered as resigned acceptance. For research purposes, he said. That's the spirit. Tommy accepted the contract. Human Express Delivery Services. We'll get it there even if there is a sun in the way. The Pigeon's pride banked toward its next destination, carrying its crew of calculated chaos toward another impossible delivery. In a galaxy that valued caution and procedure, they were the ones who flew fast, landed hard, and always got the package there on time. Because that's what humans did. They looked at the impossible, calculated exactly how dangerous it was, and then did it anyway. And they did it with style.